Avis, cette capsule a été produite simultanément en français et en anglais. Notice, this episode was produced simultaneously in English and French. Vous écoutez présentement la version anglaise. You are currently watching the English version.
Hello and welcome to Stereotypic STeist. I'm your host, Guy from the other day. It's Halloween month, and what better way to celebrate Halloween than to bring you an interactive and atmospheric adventure game, somehow questionable, based on an obscure fantasy and or horror film based on Clive Barker's novel Cabal. Developed by Impact Software and published by Ocean in 1990, this game is Nightbreed, the interactive movie. As usual, before we begin, thanks to my patrons via Patreon, as well as to those who subscribe to my channel and to those who join my Facebook group. If you like what I do, please consider supporting me. Now, prepare to be a little scared.
Starting with the movie. The story of Nightbreed is that of a man, Aaron Boone, who has chronic nightmares involving monsters in a mythical but real place, Midian. He has therefore for some time been consulting a psychiatrist, Decker, but the latter is in fact a serial killer who is trying to convince Boone that it is he who is the murderer. Leaving the cemetery or Midian, where real monsters reside, and where Boone was bitten by one of them, Pelican, precisely the coolest of the gang in my opinion, Boone is shot dead by the police. But at the morgue, because of Pelican's bite, Boone comes back to life, let's say, and begins his quest for revenge, aspiring to expose Decker for what he is, and saving/protecting Midian and its inhabitants. Midian, which will also be destroyed/burned by his fault.
It's a kind of slasher, and there's a whole community of fans regarding this movie. So, rather than highlighting all the logical, story, and cinematographic problems or issues that I noted, I'm going to focus on the game.
In fact, there are two games based on the movie. There's one that's an action, puzzle, and beat-em-up game, the W dig and what the F word are those controls type. Not bad, but not super good either. And another which consists of a hybrid. It is the latter that will be discussed in this episode. The game's plot roughly follows the film's storyline, with a few liberties or disparities. The opening scene evokes the protagonist's episodes of nightmares or delusions. Next, we are presented with a bird's-eye view map of the area. I don't really know what to say, but if it's accurately scaled, all the distances can be covered in just a few minutes of walking. But regardless, you have to travel from location to location using a car, and for some mysterious reason, your car is a real fuel vampire. Fortunately, here and there are gas stations just to fill up. On the other hand, if it so happens that you run out of gas, they take you to the mental hospital or asylum, and you resume the game from there.
I swear I can travel from Montreal to Grand Falls without having to stop to refuel. It's a bit like driving from Paris to Montélimar, or even from New York to Virginia Beach.
While we're at it, why not get a bladder gauge? When it's full, you have to stop, otherwise you'll have to go shopping for clean clothes, otherwise you'll lose charisma points. This is a rather intuitive part of the game. First, moving requires right-clicking on an intersection in the ST version rather than simply choosing a destination and left-clicking. In addition, quite often there are roadblocks. In this case, either you pass, but then you risk being shot at, which can result in your gas tank being punctured. Either you pass without anything very serious happening, or you turn back.
Because it's a well-known fact, when there are roadblocks that you decide to ignore, that's because you ought to be a notorious criminal, which justifies shooting at you.
And speaking of destinations or locations, it's not like you have a whole lot of them. There's roughly the police station, the psychiatric hospital, as well as the cemetery. If you go to the police station, you get arrested, but the game doesn't end there. You'll be sent to the hospital. At the hospital, no appointment is required. You'll be taken care of immediately. It suffices to say that you have psychological issues, delusions, and you pass before everyone else. At the cemetery, you can enter the cemetery, look around, or enter Midian. If you choose to enter Midian, immediately you will be slaughtered and the game will end. If you enter the cemetery, on the other hand, you encounter Pelican, who bites you before chasing you by running on the spot. To evade him, you must quickly click on the left mouse button at the risk of breaking your button. It's like in Konami's Track and Field, released in 1983, where you had to hammer the intended buttons in order to gain speed, except that for Track and Field, there are 2 buttons for this purpose, while for Nightbreed, only 1 button is used, as far as I know.
Which can be problematic, given the current price of an ST-compatible mouse, if you break your button.
As you leave the cemetery, you come face to face with Decker, as well as a large number of police officers. Like in the movie, Decker says you have a gun, he ducks, and you get shot at. So you end up in the morgue, but because you were bitten by Pelican, you come back to life, let's say, and you escape through the window, breaking it along with the sound of a broken plate.
Until this moment, the game follows the movie's script, and it is also from this point that the gameplay changes somewhat.
You then return to the cemetery, where you're attacked by Decker, who repeatedly throws knives at you, in a frenzy like a masked ninja in a state of amphetamine overdose. To avoid them, you move your mouse.
This is curious, because in the film, Boone is rather invincible when it comes to bladed weapons.
This is a segment of the game where you'll die so often that you'll hate the game for that alone. In return, if by sheer miraculous, extraordinary, and improbable luck you survive the flying knives, Decker will go to the police station to make a deposition. As for you, you remain in front of the cemetery gate, and this time you enter Midian, because of course you know that it's now safe to do so.
And from there, the game partly becomes a sort of dungeon crawler.
Like Dungeon Master will say, although no. I talked about the genre in a previous episode, and I invite you to watch the latter if you haven't already done so. It resembles, but it's not quite the same. It's actually a succession of labyrinthine images with straight passages and junctions where you can go left or right. Once in a while we have mini-games or mini-challenges or mini-traps to avoid or enemies to fight, like the policeman with the uniform that changes color.
What is he doing there? Is he a friend or relative to the family?
Sometimes it's lethal, like when someone plays against you using a laser pointer that you have to avoid. But very often you are knocked unconscious, and from there you find yourself again in the psychiatric hospital, from where you escape before returning to Midian, the mythical love of your life who never cared about you and who mistreats you.
It's not fun, but at least you're given a second chance, at least to start over.
Although in Dungeon Master, enemies are mobile and animated, you can also interact with a number of levers, buttons, or objects attached to the scenery. A fountain is not just there for decoration. In Nightbreed, the maze is boring and somewhat disorienting. The objective of this segment of the game is for you to get baptized and to gather monsters, not quite to recruit them in your team, not forgetting Laurie, the adjutant from the film, who is barely seen at all in the game.
And I should say, perhaps we missed out on the RPG genre somehow, in which your party teammates could give you a helping hand in your quest.
At some point, we switch to platform mode, let's say, but what we observe going down, we'll have to do that later, upwards. We're changing floors, sort of, but Boone isn't really in danger, at least not yet. It's the ascension that's going to hurt.
In principle, given that I once had a bike accident, the protagonist should at least have a concussion and a few fractured vertebrae.
Then we come back to the dungeon crawl with its mini challenges, its traps, its officers who change uniforms, until we ultimately meet Baphomet, the Baptist, the originator of Nightbreed, a sort of medieval divinity who reminds me a little of Vecna from Stranger Things. The protagonist then receives his facial tattoos and changes his name to Cabal, which is the title of Clive Barker's book, as well as the missing letter between A and B from Aaron Boone and D from Decker. Then you need to backtrack to the platform segment and go up, and now I swear, if you don't already hate the game, you're going to despise it. You have to jump diagonally, but position yourself almost pixel perfect before the platform you're on disappears, otherwise you'll never be able to grab the upper platform. So, just to calm down a little, I invite you to watch some Rick Dangerous, a game in which you don't have to worry too much about the precision of your jumps when it comes time to grab a ladder.
Now, I'll stop talking about the game's storyline to focus on its design and put it to the test.
Visually it's good for 1990. Everything was drawn using software and we intelligently made use of the Atari ST's 16-color palette, which is modified as necessary depending on the illustrated scene. Sound-wise, we have digitized sound effects which are played through the noise channel. There aren't that many, but the ones there are get noticed. We hear them loud and clear. Music-wise, the songs are also played through the noise channel. There are, to my knowledge, only 3 music in the game. The introductory one, the one when you die, and the one when you meet Baphomet. But it's good. Animation-wise, I'm not even sure it's a word. However, it depends. The fight scenes between Boone and the officers, for example, are very far from what we find in International Karate Plus. The clouds that overlook the city, let's say, and its 3 institutions are a gimmick that doesn't add much to the game. The water flowing from the fountains, on the other hand, is a nice touch. The effect results from modifying the color assignment in the palette for the few fixed pixels that make up the image. And the scrolling for the platform/platformer part is also worth considering, given that we only scroll vertically, since we know how problematic horizontal scrolling can be on the original ST.
The problem is that the game was released in 1990, the same year as Malpiti Island, which is, for me, a benchmark.
I've often said it, in the mystery and investigation category, it's probably one of the best published on the ST. The L'Encore team pulled out all the stops in every area, and the game still holds up today. The team made the Atari do things it wasn't designed to do in principle. Also, I feel like the Nightbreed developers didn't know exactly what kind of game they wanted, but if it were a dungeon crawler, something modeled on the Bard's Tale would hold up better today in my opinion, and would offer more replayability interest, even if it meant adding the random aspect to it.
Because once you've completed Nightbreed, I don't see any interest in playing it again, given all the long and frustrating sequences the game presents.
I can talk about it because, for the purposes of this episode, I had to play the Amiga and PC's running DOS versions as well, very similar to that of the ST in all their aspects, which means that everything I showed you previously, I had to do at least twice. And this replayability issue spoils the game in a way. In the 1980s, even 1990s, replayability was crucial for the world of arcades. Games had to be PUAPs, pick up and play. For the price it used to cost to rent or purchase an arcade cabinet, the machine had to be profitable, and for that a game had to be interesting enough to be played dozens or even hundreds of times.
But could we have done better or done differently for Nightbreed, knowing that it's a movie adaptation?
As I said earlier, there's the adventure beat-em-up maze game of the WDIG category, which we should have stopped at, or stuck to, and yes, the last sentence is all crooked, but I trust you get it. Otherwise, Nightbreed takes some ideas from Defender of the Crown, at least from a visual standpoint, as well as in its mini-challenges. But Defender of the Crown is a sort of board game of conquest, which doesn't really suit Nightbreed. I might have dared something like a point-and-click game for the whole game, in the same vein as The Secret of Monkey Island, even if there isn't much elements of mystery or intrigue or investigation in the movie Nightbreed. Otherwise, an RPG a la Bart's Tale 3, specifically the third one, could have been suitable, with the possibility of exploring all of a given universe, meaning its different places or locations, for example the cemetery, as well as Midian.
This was today's episode. As usual, like, subscribe, share, support, and don't hesitate to let me know in the comments of your opinion regarding the game Nightbreed, the interactive movie. Moreover, as usual, if there are any games you'd like me to talk about, let me know. I'm Guy from the Other Day. See you soon.